Welcome to Emerge and Empower Podcast TV, a platform where resilience meets transformation. Here, we amplify voices that have faced trials, trauma, and adversity, stories that inspire hope, healing, and empowerment. Every episode brings raw, unfiltered conversations with individuals who have risen from hardship, embracing faith, strength, and purpose. Join us as we break the silence, uplift one another, and emerge stronger together. New episodes air Wednesdays at 6 p.m. English and Saturdays at 6 p.m. with select Saturdays in Creole for our Haitian audience.
Hello and welcome everyone once again to Emerge and Empower with your host, Dr. Lynn J. It's been a moment since we've had a live audience, but I am happy to come back to you. As you know, life has been lifing, but I have played many of the very popular demand episodes that we had, and there's been a lot of positive feedback. I also want to thank you. I don't know if you noticed, I put it on Facebook for 20,000 views. Woohoo! And that is thanks to you. Yes, you. I could not have done it without you. And I ask you to continue sharing the episodes with your friends, your family. Come back to it. If you missed something, put it on your replay. Subscribe. Remember to subscribe so every time something is posted, you would be well aware of what is going on with Emerge and Empower. And also, as you've been seeing the beautiful cover of the queens that have graced the Emerge and Empower magazine. The magazine is another platform that is still here for you to tell your stories of resilience for your businesses. You can come on, you can place your ads. Listen, we are here to grow with you and share your stories. So if you have a story to tell, you are more than welcome to always join us here on Emerge and Empower. So on today, I have a very special guest that is on the set with us, and I would like to welcome her in. It is none other than Ada. Ada Lloyd is a beautiful soul, all right, a beautiful soul whom the Lord has created to grace the planet Earth. Amen. Even though there are a lot of things that happened in her childhood that were meant to not have her grow or become the woman that she is. But she indeed has emerged beyond the obstacles, beyond what life has brought her, and has turned her life into purpose. So let's just do a little intro on Ada. Ada, welcome to the set. Say hello to our viewing audience on today.
Thank you. It is such a delight to be here. And congratulations on those 20,000 views. That's
Yay!
absolutely awesome.
Totally awesome. If you ask me how I did, I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to do content that has purpose. And as you know, when you have anything that is positive, you don't really get a lot of those likes and views. But if I was scandalous and getting into people's business, oh, I would have probably got 1 million views in less than a week. But it's okay. We're going to keep presenting the positivity. So let's talk a little bit about Ada as she's going to come on and start with her journey as her emergence. Ada Lloyd is the emotional chain breaker. She empowers leaders and entrepreneurs to achieve a greater success by addressing the hidden emotional barriers holding them back. She specializes in healing in deep-rooted pain of childhood trauma. Ada's transformative approach helps clients break free from the imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and a variety of self-defeating behaviors, unlocking emotional freedom that fuels both personal and professional growth. So, with a mission to create lasting change, Ada inspires audiences to confront their past, reclaim their stories, and step into their full potential. By embracing emotional freedom, her clients not only find greater but also drive stronger results in their business and their lives. Listen, if you do not heal, it reflects in your business, it reflects in your family, it reflects in everything that you do. All right. So the journey to healing, if you have not yet begun, should begin today. Today, Ada will be sharing with us her journey, where it all began. But first of all, Ada, let everybody know where you're from, anything that you would like to share, and all of your viewing audience and friends, let them know you are on Emerge and Empower with Dr. Lynn J.
So it's just such a delight to be here. And today I live in the Sacramento, California area. I grew up in New York City, so I guess I'm a bi-coastal person. And I am just filled with gratitude for actually being here because approximately 18 months ago, the doctors told me I had 2 days to live.
Oh, my.
And I am thrilled that they were wrong. I'm thrilled that I can still do what I am so passionate about. And I absolutely believe that one of the reasons my life was spared was so I could continue to do the work that I do.
Indeed. Indeed. So 18 months ago, you were told you had 2 days to live. So, Ada, you are a miracle.
It was my seventh time in the hospital that year. It
Wow.
was definitely not the year that was on my bucket list.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. But you're here to continue to tell your story and your emergence. So, Ada, take us back into your childhood, into where it all began. You can give us a detail, if you'd like, about your life growing up before you get to that point, because we all have that happy moment. We all have that moment where, the little girl was daydreaming and hoping for, everything nice and pretty before this event happened.
You know, one of the things that is interesting to me is how few childhood memories I have. And I didn't realize how uncommon that was until I heard my two younger daughters talking when they were probably 5 and 7
Mhm.
about things that had happened when they were younger. And I walked in as they were having that conversation and I said, "Do you really remember all of that?" And they said, "Yeah." And they started talking about other things. And I was blown away because I probably don't have 5 childhood memories that I can actually remember.
Wow.
And one of the things that happens when we're abused is sometimes our subconscious does what it feels like we need to
Hmm.
protect us.
Right.
So, I grew up being sexually abused by my father.
Wow.
And my first memory really was when I was 12. But I have enough fragments of unexplained circumstances to know that that was not the first time that it happened.
Wow.
And one of the things that I understand is we don't need to do an archaeological dig about everything that we've ever experienced.
Right.
So, for example, in my instance, having very clear memories of being sexually abused, I don't need to go back and figure out when the first time was and how often it happened and exactly what happened. I
Right.
know what happened at that point and for the next few years in my life. And that tells me that's what I need to deal with.
Right.
And so in those days, this is back in the dark ages, if you will,
Hmm.
long, long ago. And it was long before incest or the sexual abuse of children was on the public radar.
Hmm.
And so you feel like you're the only one experiencing this, and it's ugly and it's wrong and it's dirty and it feels uncomfortable and it's painful. But you don't know about anybody else experiencing it, so you figure you're the only one and there must be something wrong with you.
Right.
And I looked for ways to deal with it. I dropped questions, breadcrumb questions to my mother who didn't pick up on them. I tried to convince an aunt and uncle that I should move in with them, but I couldn't tell them why. And so they told me no. And so I ultimately figured, okay, well, take one more shot at it and tell your mother exactly what has been going on,
Mm-hmm.
and hope that she puts her arms around you and tells you it's all going to be okay, and that she's so sorry and she's going to kick your father out and all of that. And what I
Yes.
got told was, your father really didn't do anything. He just wanted to be close to you. And I very graphically told her what he had been doing. But for her own reasons, she couldn't hear it. And so at that point, I knew that I had to deal with it. And
Mm-hmm.
my way of dealing with it was I was ahead in school already. I figured out how to graduate even earlier. And I
Right.
got myself on a college campus 2,500 miles from home 1 month after my 16th birthday.
Wow.
Now, that gave me,
16th?
pardon?
You said 16th birthday?
16.
Wow.
I turned 16 on December 15th, and the 1st of January, I was on a college campus.
Wow.
And it
That's
gave me a
amazing.
sense of physical safety, but I took all the emotional crap with me. And a few years later, I received a life altering epiphany. And that's generally how I refer to it. But in my heart, I truly know it was personal revelation from a
Mm-hmm.
loving Heavenly Father.
Right.
And it was, you are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life.
Indeed.
There's still nothing out there. And so I did the only thing I could find, and that was I jumped into the self help arena. And, I would look at a principle and I would try it out. And if it seemed helpful, I would put it in my basket and keep it. And if it didn't, I
Mm-hmm.
would toss it and look for
Right.
another principle. So several years down the road, I've got a basket full of principles that aren't connected with one another.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, well, you really ought to try to connect these and, you know, figure things out. And about that time, and it's still not on the public radar, the leader of my local church congregation called me on a Monday night and said, will you speak in church on Sunday? And I said, sure. And I'm thinking faith, hope, charity.
Right.
And then he says, you have more stress in your life than most people do. Now, at this point, I'm divorced. My oldest daughter is making horrible life choices, and I'm trying to get my business off the ground. And he said, you seem to deal with the stress better than most people do. I want you to talk about how you deal with it from a gospel perspective. In that moment, my heart sunk because I knew I was going to need to make reference to the abuse. So I went and found my two younger daughters and said, Frank just called and asked me to speak in church on Sunday. And his teenagers are so good at doing, they rolled their eyes at me and said, so what else is new? And they knew about the abuse, but obviously no details.
Right.
And I said, I feel like I'm going to need to make reference to the abuse I experienced growing up. And to their credit, they said, we're good with that, Mom. And so on Sunday, as I began speaking, I spoke about the stress that we all experience on a daily basis. The guy that flips you off on the freeway,
Right.
the boss that's nagging you over who knows what,
Mm-hmm.
the teenager that rolls their eyes at you.
Right.
And then I said, we all have uncommon stresses. Things like divorce, delinquent kids, having been sexually abused as a child, health issues, financial issues. I've experienced all of these, and these are the strategies that I have used. And I went on to speak. That was my only reference to the abuse.
Wow.
Afterwards, I had three women come up to me. Two of them individually laid their head on my shoulders and amidst their tears whispered, I thought I was the only one. The third one laid her head on my shoulders and sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. She couldn't say anything, but I
Right.
knew, and she knew that I knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was the day that I knew that even though my healing was not yet complete, I had an obligation to reach back and light a path forward for those who did not yet know it was possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, over the next several years, as I was raising my kids and running my business and living life,
Mm-hmm.
I did that when I had the opportunity to do so. And then in 2009, it came time to shut down my interior design business and make a transition into working with people full time. But I knew that before I did that, there were some things I needed to finish
Right.
working on for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I created the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life, which I originally created just for me. And those are personal, your relationship with yourself; physical, everything about your health and your body;
Mm-hmm.
emotional, which is largely about resilience; spiritual, however you define spiritual; professional, whatever brings money into the house; financial, largely about stability and goals; and relationships of all kinds. And how you define success in each of those areas. Not
Mm-hmm.
what society says, not what mom and dad or anybody else say,
Right.
but what you say. And then using that to create your unique definition of success that can be a mindful filter to know when to say yes and when to say no, and to create a roadmap to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I began. But it was gradually working with things would come up. I started doing business coaching, procrastination, various things like that for small business people. But gradually, things like about childhood would keep popping up when people got stuck.
Right.
And gradually, I would share more of my story, and we would delve into their stories and all of that. And then in 2022, I did something really stupid. I tripped over my own 2 feet
Wow.
and wound up in the hospital. Now, the good news is I didn't break anything.
Good.
And so I came home just a couple of days later, and I had a very clear spiritual prompting to tear apart everything I had built over the years and to start over and to take parts from various programs that I had done
Mm-hmm.
and put them together into a single program. And I clearly felt the hand of God in the process of doing it. It was definitely not something I did by myself.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's very much like he was the author and I was the scribe. And together we created Achieving Emotional Freedom Now.
So let's put a pin there for a moment, because we have a lot of our viewers, because this is a trauma platform, and majority, let's say 90% of the audience are dealing with that childhood trauma. Now, each of us had to, at some point, tell the parent what was happening. Some people did it when they were much older and out of the house. Like you, I myself, it was done while I was a child, under 10 years old, when this brought about by someone in the neighborhood that I felt comfortable enough to share it with. All right. So your mom brushed it out. He did what he had to do. And I can say for you now, you're trying to find a place that you are good at something, so you're excelling and achieving in certain areas, but yet you are still broken on the inside. Okay, so even though you move forward, you have high accolades, and probably everyone's looking at you and say, "Oh, she thinks she's Miss Goody Two Shoes and she's got it all together," not knowing what you came away from, what you ran away from, because that was your escape. That was your escape to leave, to get out of the house as soon as possible. And college was that at 16. That's very young. And that's very commendable that you did. Because what tends to happen is we overachieve in certain areas to take away from a lot of hurts and pains that we have in our lives. Sometimes when people see someone who's an overachiever, they're seeing this person that's always successful, but behind the mask is a lot of pain and a lot that has not yet been addressed. So it stemmed from now you in college, then you got married. Now we're gonna go from you in college. While you're now in college, you're 16. Was this college still local or was it out? Okay. So how was that
2,500 miles away.
experience? Okay. So what was that experience for you now? I mean, for you, that's freedom. You no longer have to deal with your father in the house, but now you have responsibilities now. So can you take us through this moment in your life?
So I was really very good, like so many of us are. I developed a masterful facade of competence and capability. And people thought that's who I really was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Nobody got past that. Back here was all the brokenness and the tears and the crying and
Mm-hmm.
the just shattered into a gazillion pieces. And so often that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we protect ourselves is we create that facade. And for years I had that out there and it was rock solid.
Hmm.
But gradually it started to develop cracks. And I
Mm-hmm.
was spending a lot of time and energy trying to plaster the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to the point where I decided, and this was really after the majority of my healing had happened,
Mm-hmm.
that the energy to maintain that facade wasn't worth it.
Mm.
And that I was simply going to drop it. And that if somebody judged me, which one of my big fears over the years was fear of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
that I
Yeah.
would be viewed as damaged.
Yes.
That
That's number one. That's number
that
one.
so that was the huge fear. And there were others, but that was the 800-pound elephant
Yeah.
in the middle of the room, if you would. And so I made the decision that if somebody was going to judge me, that was their problem. I was simply going to own who I was
Mm-hmm.
and what I had experienced and who I was in the process of becoming. And if you have a problem with that, that's your problem. And that was really the beginning, if you will, of emotional freedom for me.
Right. So would you say we can look, because even though you're talking, I'm still seeing the imposter syndrome because we put on a facade that it's all good and it's strong, you're smiley. We overdo things. You're helping to extent, you're overdoing everything but focusing on, like they say, the elephant in the room, which is hard to bypass, but we keep doing it. No, 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 no. Or eventually put it in our subconscious and leave it there. What happened, as you said, is these cracks. See, what happened when there's pressure? We've seen it. I've seen it sometimes in movies where there's a pressure and there's a wall, and eventually the water just breaks through because the crack. So if we don't deal with the cracks, whether the roof is leaking, whatever is going on in our life, then eventually what is out is going to come in. What is hidden will come out. So I like how you are now made to address. Now we talk about, you talked about being married. Now while you were married, and to the point, I don't know if this had anything to do with the divorce because you were still healing and trying to find yourself. Now, did you tell him about your past childhood? Was he aware of where you was and the hurt and the pain that you were going through? Was he supportive, or was that a more continuation or things added to the pain?
I told him about it after we got engaged, but before we got married. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, if you can't deal with it, I'll break the engagement. And
Mm-hmm.
he said all of the right things. But I didn't realize until years later that that's when he withdrew emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And during the 20 years we were married, I subsequently described it as like living in an emotional desert. And so much of my healing really happened after the divorce. And the divorce happened about the same time. Well, it happened shortly before that story that I made reference to before, where I was speaking in church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, it still wasn't, on the public radar.
Right.
And here's the thing, I talk about the symptoms of childhood trauma, which are all the things like self doubt, imposter syndrome, addiction. Addiction so often begins because a child is in pain and they're looking for anesthesia.
Yes.
So if dad's got a booze cabinet, if mom's got prescription pills, there's
Right.
always the refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is going to anesthetize us to the pain that we don't know how to deal with.
Yes.
And then that compounds and becomes a way of dealing with stress and a habit and all of that over the years.
Mm-hmm.
We have all of these symptoms that society looks to deal with. But affirmations won't replace the imposter syndrome.
No, no.
Um, you know, it's only when we heal the underlying trigger, which is what happened in childhood,
Yes.
that the symptoms can then be healed.
Yeah.
And the legacy that is always there
Yeah.
is that voice in the back of your head that tells you you're not good enough,
You're not good enough.
that you're inadequate in this way or that way or something
Mm-hmm.
else.
Inferior.
And the thing that my program does is we silence those voices. We first work with stories to separate out your story from your abusers and enablers' stories
Mm-hmm.
so you can own your story, because they're masters at commingling their story with yours and making you responsible for their choices. You're
Yes.
never, ever, ever responsible for somebody else's choice.
Never. Never.
And so as we separate that,
But as children, though, you
yes,
don't.
you don't know
You
that.
think you are. You don't know that.
That's
Okay.
why you become that person, or you believe you're that person you were told that you were
Yeah.
when somebody was lying to you.
Yes.
And so we have to separate out the lies so that we can throw them in the nearest dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
can quiet those voices. And then for the first time, you can realize and decide who you are.
Right.
Not who somebody else told you you were, but who you are,
Who
what
you truly
matters
are.
to you, and who you want to become, and empower you to do that.
Indeed,
It's
and
an awesome journey.
that comes in with your likes, the colors, because when you go through such emotional trauma and haven't dealt with it, you don't even have favorite colors. You don't have. There doesn't seem to be any favorite. You don't want to be too bright. You don't want to be too obvious. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. All of these are there. But once healing truly comes into place, you want to wear vibrant colors. It's no longer gloom. You want to be happy. You want to be I like to say this, the brightest crayon in the box. You
I
understand?
love that.
But until then, you're the darkest crayon in the box. You
Well, and
don't want to shine.
you live on autopilot.
That's it. That's it.
It's like you're trying to be anesthetized to life.
Yes.
And I don't want to see anyone in the darkness of pain when I know that the joy of light is possible.
It's true. It's true.
And
We can talk about desensitization because people also do that. They become numb, no feeling, nonchalant, and this even is the person's behavior even towards their children. And they feel like mom doesn't love me. This is that. There is no any empathy because the person has been in so much pain. Some people, tend to lash out without, actually speaking, going to the details. Marriages, they've
Mhm.
gone from one relation to the other. And what people don't understand, it's not people that's the problem. It's you not addressing, the problem, not addressing your past, confronting it, talk, put it right in front of you, that childhood, maybe you were 8, maybe you were 6, maybe you were 10, whatever age you was, and bring that forward in order to speak to your younger self. You understand? To see the place of healing. Like for me, in my case, I was 27, 27, and my daughter was 7. And it was not until I had a moment that I saw her 7-year-old innocence for me to realize I was innocent and it was not my fault. That is when I began to heal.
You know, abuse is generational. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's two reasons it's really important that we break chains. One is so that that person that was abused as a child can heal, but
Yes.
also so that we break the chains so another generation doesn't suffer.
Yes.
Now, here's one of the sad things is that, and it's sometimes a positive thing, but in this context, it's very much a sad thing,
Sad thing.
is
Yes.
what we grow up with is our normal.
Yes.
If you look at people who are in domestic violence situations, almost every perpetrator and victim was abused as a child or witnessed violence in the home. They
Indeed.
are replicating their normal.
Yes.
They are attracted to their normal.
Mm-hmm.
We have to break the chain to that normal
Yes.
and allow them to create a healthier normal
Yes.
for themselves, or they will wind up cycling through that situation over and over and over again.
Yes, indeed.
And
And
it
it
will be
repeats.
passed on to another
Oh,
generation.
yes. So that's why I don't like when people decide I'm going to be silent. I'm not going to talk about it. I've spoken to many individuals who sat with me who never said it, never told anything. And the perpetrator kept coming in their home. It was the father, uncle, brother. These people were there. You never told anyone. Nobody can help you because nobody knew anything. And not only that, while you're being silent, this person is still continuing the abuse on your siblings, your cousins, nephews. This is continued until it's addressed. Okay, there are those who are still in fear of, I don't want to be the one to break the family apart. I don't want to be the one. But remember, this person wronged you. Okay,
And
they
that's
wronged you and it needs to be handled. That's why we live in a world right now where you can see a lot of hurt people hurting people.
and
Okay?
that's why it's so important that we understand that abusers commingle their story with yours.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell anybody, you'll be responsible for breaking up the family.
Yes, yes.
All of those messages.
Emotional blackmail.
Yes. Now, one of the things that I use as an analogy is, when there's something we don't like, there's a vulnerability that we have that we want to shove it in a closet, lock the door, put a chain around it, and pretend it doesn't exist. But that's as effective as trying to put smoke in a closet and think it's going to stay there.
Right.
The smoke is going to work its way out under the bottom of the door and around the door frame. And so it is with childhood trauma. We may not see how it's affecting us, but it is. And I would love to share two stories with you if we've got time of
Yes,
two
we do. We have
clients
time. Because
that
before we
represent.
get to it, once you tell the story, we're going to take a break and then we will go into the whys and the breakdown to help individuals as you've done through your program because we want to introduce that here to the viewers and that will be another way for them to connect with you as well.
Thanks so much.
So you may continue the two stories.
Okay, so they represent the opposite extremes, if you will, of
Okay.
the kind of issues that I deal with. One is a young woman who came to me through a mutual friend, and she had grown up being physically, sexually, emotionally, mentally, and financially, they stole her babysitting money, abused. When she got herself out of the household, She got into a abusive relationship, which is unfortunately incredibly common. Ultimately, she extricated herself from that relationship, and she got herself into therapy, and she married a really good guy. She had been in therapy for 5 years and nothing had changed. So she questioned why what I did was different, why it would work when 5 years of therapy hadn't worked.
Mm-hmm.
And her husband was even more reticent because he didn't want to see her disappointed again. And he didn't want to spend more money on something else that wasn't going to work. But she decided she wanted to try the program. And so in it's a 12-week program. And in week 6, when she came on the call, she had tears streaming down her face. And she said, "You know that I was in therapy for 5 years and nothing
Wow.
changed. In six
Five
weeks,
years.
in 6 weeks, you have changed my life." At that point, I had tears streaming down my face.
Indeed.
But that's when I knew that the program that God and I had created truly had the power to create miracles in people's lives
Mm-hmm.
beyond what I had ever anticipated, honestly.
Right.
And on the other extreme, a woman who had a happy childhood and wasn't concerned about anything there, but she had come to me because she had been in a cult for several years as an adult and was dealing with some ramifications from that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what we were focused on. She was in her early 60s. She had been an accountant her entire adult life, including the
Mm-hmm.
accountant for the cult.
Right.
And at this point, she had her own bookkeeping practice. And I knew that she was a CPA because of something that she had said, but she didn't identify as a CPA. And that didn't make any sense to me because
Mm-hmm.
I know what's involved in earning that designation. I've
Right.
been surrounded by CPAs my whole life. And so one day, as we're talking about something she was concerned about, in passing, without it ever hitting her radar, she said, "In third grade, my teacher told me I would never be a success in life because I wasn't any good at math." And she keeps talking. Well, I've got bells going off in the back of my head going ding,
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 ding.
ding, ding. And after we finished talking about what she was focused on, I circled back and I said, "Tell me more about what happened in third grade." And she said, "No, there's really not anything else to tell." I said, "Does that have anything to do with the fact that you don't identify as a CPA?"
Yes.
Boom, a light bulb went off. She did not feel worthy of a designation she had earned because of what a bullying third grade teacher had told
Teacher.
her 55 years before. So we quickly took care of the bullying, and she went on to change her website and change her marketing
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And when I was speaking with her a couple of months later, she said, "You've done more for my business than all the business coaches that I hired."
Wow.
And I smiled and said, "Thank you, but I really didn't do anything for your
Healing.
business. I
Healing.
helped you remove a block in your personal life so you could show up as who you are in your
Yes.
business." And we
Yes.
went through the process of silencing that voice that told her she could never be a success in life
Mm-hmm.
by
Mm-hmm.
confronting it with truth. That's how you prove a lie is a lie.
That's it.
You
That's it.
confront it with truth.
That's
And
it.
so in her case, we started with, okay, we want 10 truths that are going to prove that that's a lie.
Right.
I said, okay. And she's sort of looking at me like, huh? And I said, well, tell me how you did in math in high school. Well, I got A's. What about in college? I got A's. And you're a CPA? Yeah. And I understand that, and I already knew the answer to this question, but
Right. Right.
I said, I understand that only about 14% of those who take the CPA exam pass it all 4 parts the first time. How did you do? Well, I passed all 4 parts. Have you ever bounced a check? No. Okay, we've got 5 truths. You go now create 5 more.
Mm-hmm.
But every time you hear that voice telling you you can't be a success in life, because you're not any good in math. I want you to counter it by saying, no, you're wrong, because boom, 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 and
Exactly.
list 5 of those truths. And gradually, that voice will quiet.
Wow, that's
And that's
amazing.
part of what we were talking about a couple of months later, is how that
That's
voice had
amazing.
quieted.
That's amazing. Because everyone remembers every childhood disappointment, every childhood promise, everything that was negatively said to you, whether it was in passing, believe it or not, it stays there because we let it take a seat. And everything that we're doing is stemming from it consciously or subconsciously. There is always some particular incident as to why, well, I don't know why I am the way I am. But when you go back to when you was a child, you remember, wow. So all of these things happen. I love to go in different sessions and I'm always growing and I'm always learning. The most recent one was a 14-week program. I had to go through it in order to come back and be, an instructor. So as I'm in here, I thought I had it all together. I mean, I forgive everybody. I'm beyond that. But here's what came to me. I always remember staying up late at night, can't sleep during the night. Never connected it to my childhood trauma until I sat in the classroom that particular moment. And of course, everyone in class will tell you, we love when Linda's here because I find humor in a lot of these things and I'm trying to pull other people out of what they were holding on to. And so I go, guess what? I just realized this not sleeping at night. It didn't just happen. It happened in the moment of it was in the night that this
It was
trauma
defense.
happened.
It was defense against it happening again.
And I stayed up my whole life. It was normal. It was normal for me not to take naps. Maybe I'm the only kid that doesn't take nap, but I refuse to take a nap. I never connected it to my trauma. Now, mind you, I'm healed. I'm in all these places, but I had issues that still needed to be worked on. Okay. And that was one of them that I never credited to this. And that's when I realized, oh my goodness,
You know,
that was it.
this is why when somebody goes through my program, we look at, all of the various kinds of abuse that they experienced and their abusers and enablers, and we choose one, the
Mm-hmm.
one that has the greatest impact on their life today. And the idea is that once they work through that and they are able to break the chains to that, they have a tool belt
Mm-hmm.
that will allow them to deal with anything else, past, present, or future.
Yes.
Because we're all going to hear things where somebody is bullying us about this or that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, we talk about forgiveness, but forgiveness is never about condoning what
No,
somebody else did.
no.
Forgiveness is about lifting the burden of hurt and anger off of your shoulders so
Yes.
you do not allow their choices to continue to abuse you.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because when you hold on to it, what you are effectively doing is becoming complicit in your abuse.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Indeed. And basically, you don't have a handle on it, so that you don't even have the remote. That person has the remote to push these buttons. So we need to pull and get that remote back and control. Here's what I want to watch. Here's what I don't want to watch. I don't want to go to the commercials, pay for the full subscription, so you don't have the commercials, so you have control. I don't know about you, but if I'm watching something YouTube, that's why I have a paid YouTube channel. And I was at my daughter's house last week and I'm watching this thing and a commercial came on. I said, commercial? I haven't had commercials on ever. I can't remember. Then I realized I have a paid subscription. I paid for what I want. Okay, I won't allow it. I don't want somebody's commercials popping up in the screen. I don't want commercials popping up while I'm listening to music, but I paid for that. I invested into what I want. And this is what a lot of people don't realize. You need to invest in what you want so you don't have all these things intruding and being forced upon you. That's one of the reasons why I stopped watching regular TV long, long time ago. It's been over 13 years where I've sat in front of TV because I don't like commercials. You get to the good part, commercial, no. I'll go to YouTube, so.
So here's the thing that you just brought up that is huge. The vast majority of us who were abused as children grew up to become control freaks. I'm exhibit one.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have control
Exactly.
over our life and what we experienced as children. We are compulsive about being in control of our lives in adulthood. Whether it is something as minor as a commercial, or in my case, is if I am in church, if I'm at the movies, if I'm at the theater, I want to be sitting on the end seat.
Me too. That's
I
me.
want to know
Every day. That's me every day. I
that
don't I want to see the door. I don't want my back to the door.
we need the freedom
Yes.
to know that we have the control to
Yes.
escape
Yes.
something that becomes uncomfortable.
It's so true. So true. So true.
So here's one of the other things that I wanted to mention in regard to something you mentioned earlier. You know, sometimes those bullying statements just kind of roll off our backs.
Right.
Hopefully they do most of the time. But sometimes they burrow deep into our subconscious.
Indeed.
Especially when we're a small child.
Yes.
And it's coming from a parent, a teacher, even a peer or a sibling. And it gets buried there. And then we hear something else that reinforces it. And something else that reinforces it. And something else that reinforces it. And it builds layer upon layer. And those are the places where we tend to be extremely vulnerable.
Yes.
And that's why it is so important that we understand what happened, that we break the chains so that we can have emotional freedom to be who we choose to be.
Yes.
Not be who somebody else told us that we were, or not be somebody who is cowering in the corner, afraid that somebody is going to find out something about us that will result in them judging us.
Indeed.
Nobody deserves to live that way.
Indeed. You are so right. And this is one of the reasons why episodes like this is helpful, because the more you watch, the more you learn, the more you listen, you're always discovering something about yourself. And you go like, wow, it's every day. Like even when you mentioned always wanting the edge seat, I never even thought about that one. But I always want, it has to be the end seat. Or if I'm in a restaurant, I need to see the door. And I know usually they say the guy should be the one facing the door because if there's a danger so they can handle it. But no, me, I need to see the door. I need to know where the exit points are. I don't know if you're like me. I count the tiles in the ceiling. I count the steps that I walk on. I am so conscious of what I do, that it is very rare that things just pass me. Like, I want to be alert. I want to be sharp in my discernment. All of these is because as a child, you're innocent, right? You're still learning. You're trusting people. And it's the people that you love that has hurt you. That is the worst kind of trauma ever. I'm not saying there aren't any other traumas, but when you trust the person that's supposed to love you and protect you, and that is the person that has abused you, that is like on a whole different level. It takes years. Some people might say, oh, get over it. That is very insensitive. You don't tell someone who's going through pain to get over it. I've heard this enough. I'm tired of hearing your story. Can't you say something else? No, this is their journey, their healing. Okay, let people talk, let people express. But a lot of people are saying the wrong things. Get over it. It happened a long time ago. That person is dead. Da 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 da. The pain is still there until they can address it. Like you said, this person was what, 60 years old
So
to realize.
here's the thing about what you're saying is that sometimes a child will tell somebody what's happening and they may be told, oh, that didn't really happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that big of a
Mm-hmm.
deal. Get over it. So
Yeah.
the child is already feeling diminished by what they've experienced that they don't understand, that
Yeah.
they know just feels dirty and ugly and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
when somebody tells them it's not that big of a deal or to get over it, it diminishes them further.
Yes. Yes.
It devalues them. So, in another instance, I've got a friend who refuses my help because I'm a friend,
That
and
happens too. That
I want to
happens too.
smack her because I know I could help her,
Exactly.
and she's
I
been
I
dealing
can
with this for
relate.
years. But she recently had a situation where there was she was abused sexually by her brother,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a family thing that was coming up,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and her brother was going to be there, and she said something to her mother about how uncomfortable she was about this and that she
Mm-hmm.
really didn't want to have any comfort, any contact with her brother. Now she's in her late 50s, okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And her mother said, that was years ago. What's the big deal? Why are you still holding on to it?
Oh my.
So often, the people that should support us and
Yes.
love us unconditionally abuse us by diminishing our
So
experiences.
that is a form of abuse for those who are watching. Your response
Absolutely.
is a form of abuse. You're not taking the initiative, not looking into telling them, discrediting what was said, saying time has passed, yada, yada. All of that is also abuse, believe it or not. So your response, okay, adds to that layer.
So here's what I want to really make clear to people. We're not talking about living in a place of victimization.
Right,
Too often today, society celebrates victimization and
right,
says, because of this, you're not responsible for that.
right.
I have a favorite quote from Stephen Covey. He said, I am not responsible for my circumstance. Or wait, I am not a product of my circumstances.
Mm-hmm,
I'm a
mm-hmm.
product of my decisions. We all have circumstances that we don't like, that were
Yes,
unfair, that were hurtful, that were whatever. But our choice, our freedom, is how we choose to deal with them.
yes.
And one of the things that happens so often is that we lose the ability to trust because we have been betrayed in such a significant and traumatic way.
Yes.
And so we tend to go to one of two extremes. We trust carelessly and we wind up getting betrayed and hurt again.
Yes. Yes.
Or we, pack ourselves in the closet and we shut ourselves off and we're never going to trust anybody.
Yes.
And neither one of those are productive.
Mm-hmm.
We trust by learning to trust wisely. And that means you trust somebody on a superficial level.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see that honored over a period of time, and you get to determine what that period of time is,
Mm-hmm.
you can trust them on a little deeper level.
Right.
But you don't go plunging all the way down.
No, no. To an
When you
extent. To an
when,
extent.
when you see that honored, you can trust them on a little deeper level. You can go as many levels as you choose, as you're comfortable with, but do it
Yes.
incrementally. When you see that trust honored, that's not a guarantee that you'll never be betrayed again, but that sure puts the odds in your favor that it's
Yes.
not going to happen.
Yes. It's true. That's how I move about in everything that I do it in increments. I'm going to try this, see if I can trust you. Then I go a little further. And I'm not telling you, this is just me and how I'm viewing you, what you're saying to me, the cues. I'm reading between the lines.
Hmm.
I'm reading what you're not saying. I'm reading. Listen, I'm like totally investigating. And that's how I can tell. And there's something about me. If someone is being true, I welcome. It's like we've been friends forever. But those who pretend to be something they're not, my spirit never takes to. My spirit never takes to. I'm like, there's something more. This is not who this person is, because why? I'm testing and I'm trusting. So when something happens, I'm not surprised. When people are like, how come you do that? I say, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I did tell you, I did that, because we have to, and praying and asking God for discernment is maybe one of why I have one of my biggest thing for discernment, to be sharp in what I see, what I hear, and all of that is because of what happened as a child. Those barriers weren't there as a child and they were open. Okay. And so now I realize I'm going to put these walls and these defense, I'm putting all these things up in my life because they're safeguarding me. I want to protect my peace, all right, as much as I can. All right. I love people. Believe it or not, I love people. I love to be around people. I'm a people person. All right. But at the same time, those, like you said, those test levels, oh, yes,
You know,
they are happening.
let me suggest a change in your phraseology. I don't think those are walls. I think they're filters
Filters.
because
Phraseology. I like that.
walls are solid.
Yes,
Filters
yes.
are a form of discerning,
Right.
of
Well, I
of
have the
seeing
walls and the
through
filters.
something.
There's certain places you just can't. Yeah.
It's life is a wonderful adventure. It doesn't mean that we are going to not have pain.
Oh,
But part of the adventure is learning how to turn pain into growth,
yes.
into joy, into
Yes.
serving others.
Yes.
And that's, I got a message um, from a man this morning that I worked with, and he talked about how I had changed his life because he came to understand so many things that he had done over the years that he didn't know why he had done.
Mm-hmm,
And he
mm-hmm.
now understood what he had done. But the thing that just absolutely blew me out of the water is that with that understanding, he is no longer stress eating. And since Christmas, he has lost 50 pounds
Wow.
at
Wow.
73 years of age.
Wow. Wow. That's
When I
beautiful.
get when we finish this podcast, I'm going to be working with a client that was in therapy for 20 years for depression.
Oh my gosh.
In week 2 of my program, she said, for the first time, I feel my depression lifting. And now we're in week 11, and she's a different person. Her countenance is totally, completely different.
Wow.
Her
Wow.
energy level is totally and completely different. This is what brings so much
Those are
joy to
great
me.
testimonials. 20
And
years,
if,
5 years.
thank you, if the pain that I experienced allows me to have the joy that I have, being a factor in those kinds of changes and healing
Mm-hmm.
in other people, I can honestly tell you I'm grateful for the abuse I experienced.
I say it all the time because I wouldn't be who I am
Yeah.
today had I not gone through that. What I wanted to happen again, no. But definitely have grown, and that's why today me, you, and many others have turned their pains into purpose, and it's just to love on individuals. Because I don't know about you, I didn't have someone pouring into me. I didn't have someone believing in me, telling me that they loved me, pushing me along. I was always pushing, said I got to go against the grain, I got to go against the statistic, pushing all my life. You understand? So today we're in a position to want to pull people up. And I like what you said about the people that are your friends who you can help, but they are too close. That's what the Bible says. A prophet is not honored among its people
Yeah.
because we rather go to somebody else, probably be in therapy for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, when all you had to do is sit down, with a friend, okay, and they can actually help you out. But hey, maybe someone's watching today that have that friend in their life. Maybe someone is watching that, maybe it's Ada's friend, my friend, whoever's friend. We are here to help. We are not here to criticize. We are not here to tell your business out on the streets. We are here for your growth, that you grow so much and are so happy that you're giving a testimony. Like when Jesus healed the people, he would say, you don't have to say anything. They go and said, come see a man. He healed me. He did this. The testimonies will speak for themselves. You understand? So, Ada, I truly thank you. And I want to go with those. I think you said it was 7 words. I would like for you to dive us in as we close out on the different, I think you said it was 7, correct?
The 7 pillars.
7 pillars. So let's go back to the 7 pillars. And for those who are watching, take note. She will share it in the comment section later, and may it help you. But listen, affirmations can't bring you healing. I don't know how many affirmation books I had. I was always speaking positively in my life. That was a way to encourage my spirit, but it didn't heal me. All
Yeah.
right. So please don't just jot these down and say you're going to quote them and you're going to get an epiphany. It doesn't work that way. Go ahead, Ada.
So the 7 pillars of a happy and successful life are personal, your relationship with yourself. And I want to share something about that because I was working with a young man several years ago. He was 26, and I was blown away because I rarely work with anybody that young. And I knew he was struggling with that principle. And so I said, okay, if you met another young man and you wanted to get to know him because you thought you might have the basis for a good friendship, what would you do? And he said, well, I would take him to this he was a big networker. I'd take him to this networking event and this. And I said, no, 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 no. We're not talking about a professional relationship. We're talking about a personal relationship. I knew he loved sports. So I said, would you invite him over to shoot some hoops? And he said, yeah. And then he added 2 or 3 other, things that they could do together. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, so you would spend time and energy getting to know this person? And he said, well, yeah. I said, have you spent the same time and energy getting to know yourself? This pillar is the one on which everything else rests, and it is the most challenging one for people to do because we talk about aspects of our life, our jobs, our families, our hobbies. We don't talk about the characteristics that are important to us, like honor and integrity. That's what personal is about. Then is physical, everything about your health and your body. Emotional, which is largely about resiliency. Spiritual, however you define spiritual. Professional, whatever brings money into the household. Financial is largely about goals and stability. And then relationships of all kinds.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, as we close, Ada, any last remarks to our viewing audience? Because you've seen the experience that individuals have gone through. You know those who have gone through years of therapy. You know those who have not even started their journey. What would your message be to the individual and even to a parent who might have regrets on how they reacted to the child when they brought this about, or even someone who's an adult now who might have said, like you said, you're grown, get over it. What would you like to say to our viewers?
You are never responsible for somebody else's choices. You are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life. I would love to be the person who helps you Do that, but more than that, I want you to find the right person that helps you. And if you're working with somebody and you're just talking round and around about facts, they're not the right person because it's feelings that drive behavior and it's feelings that need to have chains broken and healing happen. Your feelings deserve to be honored. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Amen. Thank you so much, Ada. You have been such a beautiful guest here, a very informative guest. And I believe a lot of people have pulled a lot of nuggets from this. A lot of people have a GPS for tomorrow of their lives from this on how to move forward and to seek the right help. Because notice, you heard what she said. There are those who are on 5 years, 20 years, and just in a matter of weeks, they came away from so much because some people really they really are only about their money and how long they could string you along anyway. So a lot of people don't take this to heart. All right. But healing is beautiful. Healing is peace. Healing is beauty. Healing is colors. Amen. You want to live in color instead of being colorblind. Do you know that when you're not healed, you're even colorblind and you're confused? You can even become deaf. Okay. Um, in a spiritual sense and also almost even physically, because once people have healed, they're like, wow, I can hear better, I can see better. So much of change in your life and transformation. So it is coaches like myself and Ada and many. There are people right in your area, in your network. If you don't want to go to somebody you know, find someone. Pray about the person you go to. Don't just be a number in their list, but to know that you're truly on your journey to healing. All right. We don't want pacifying things anymore. We want healing, okay? Not to pacify, but to truly bring healing to individuals. So, Ada, I thank you once again for being here on Emerge and Empower. And I do believe, everyone, this will not be the last time that she come on here because there will be some segments where she can come and pour into you. So it's based on your feedback so we can know what is the areas that you would like for us to spend a little bit more time on. And she'll be more than glad to come. Her links and connection will be in the bio so that you can be able to connect with her outside of this podcast. So thank you again for being a beautiful audience. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And thank you for being on the set with us on today. Bye bye.